Most survival plans share the same blind spot. They stockpile. They rotate cans. They build deep freeze stores against a supply chain failure that may or may not come. And they are right to prepare. But every one of those plans has a date on it. The freeze-dried meals run out. The canned goods expire. The stored water goes stale. There is a different kind of preparation. One that does not run out. One where the land itself becomes the supply chain, and the supply chain cannot be interrupted because it is growing in your yard. The high desert of Arizona and New Mexico is one of the harshest food environments on Earth. Summer temperatures hold above 110 degrees for weeks. Annual rainfall in Tucson averages 12 inches. Rivers run dry for months at a time. And yet, for more than 2,000 years before a single grocery store existed, communities of tens of thousands of people fed themselves entirely from that ground. Not by fighting the desert, by reading it. They understood something that was erased when the supply chain arrived. The desert does not produce all at once. It produces in sequence. Each plant delivers in a different month. Stack them correctly, and the harvest never stops. Welcome to Nature's Lost Vault. Today we are pulling back to show the full picture, because the real power was never in any single plant. It was in how they worked together. The archive opens with a people called the Hohokam. They occupied the Sonoran Desert of what is now Arizona from around 300 CE, and they built something that still astonishes researchers today. By 800 CE, their canal irrigation networks stretched hundreds of miles across desert river valleys. The complexity of those systems rivaled ancient Egypt and China. At their peak, around 1300 CE, the Hohokam population approached 40,000 people in one of the driest landscapes on the continent. They did not import their food system from somewhere else. They built it from what the desert offered. Archaeologist Suzanne Fish documented agave fields stretching across 1,200 acres in the Santa Cruz Basin. The Hohokam made use of nearly 200 species of Sonoran desert plants, actively encouraging the growth of cholla cactus and agave, and selectively cultivating strains with distinct flavors. They were not foragers tolerating a difficult land. They were designers working with it. The system they built was not layered the way a forest is layered. The desert does not stack its abundance vertically. It staggers it through time. Each plant in the system delivers its peak output in a different season. The harvest calendar runs almost unbroken from late winter through early winter, plant to plant, month to month across the year. Winter ends in the Sonoran Desert with the cholla bud harvest. In late March and early April, just before the plants flower, the Tohono O'odham collect cholla buds using harvesting sticks made from saguaro ribs. The buds are brief, appearing for only a few weeks, and they carry more calcium per gram than milk. Terrell Dew Johnson, a Tohono O'odham foods educator who has spent 30 years reviving this tradition, describes the harvest calendar as a living clock. Cholla buds first, then saguaro fruit, then mesquite pods, then prickly pear. Each one arrives as the previous one fades. In late spring, agave enters its single productive moment. The Hohokam grew at least 6 species of agave across cultivated fields, planting them on slopes and surrounding them with rock piles to capture rainfall. An agave plant lives 12 to 16 years, producing nothing edible until the moment it prepares to flower. Then a stalk shoots upward in a matter of days. The plant concentrates every calorie it has stored across its entire lifetime into the heart. And that is when the harvest happens. New Mexico State University testing found that dried roasted agave contains 85% soluble carbohydrates and is roughly equivalent in food value to oats. The roasted heart tastes like sweet potato crossed with molasses. The last few traditional agave roasts were held on Tohono O'odham and Yavapai Apache reservations around World War II. The technique, like so much else, nearly disappeared with them. By early summer, the saguaro harvest begins. The Tohono O'odham call saguaro fruit bahidaj, and their calendar marks the harvest as the start of the new year. The Ha Sanbaihi, the saguaro harvest ceremony, is the moment the monsoon season is called in. Families harvest using quipad, long poles made from fallen saguaro ribs, knocking the fruit from plants that can stand 50 feet tall and live 200 years. A single saguaro can hold dozens of fruits. What could not be eaten fresh was turned into jam, dried paste, flour, cooking oil, syrup, and a ceremonial wine called ne-wee. One south-facing desert slope harboring a full saguaro forest represented an enormous food reserve that required no planting, no irrigation, and no annual replanting. It was a standing larder that renewed itself every year without human intervention. As summer monsoon rains arrive in July and August, the prickly pear fruit ripens. The Tohono O'odham classified the fruit of Opuntia engelmanni by color, time of ripening, and storage quality, the same careful, specific knowledge that any serious farmer applies to a crop they depend on. The pads themselves, called nopales, are edible year-round. A 2019 scientific review concluded that prickly pear pads demonstrate significant positive health effects in people managing type 2 diabetes, including reductions in blood glucose and insulin. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, noting that climate change is making droughts more frequent and severe, formerly called prickly pear an essential crop for arid regions. The plant grows without irrigation once established, spreads from any pad fragment pressed into soil, and in a backyard setting becomes a permanent food source that asks for almost nothing. Through late summer and into fall, mesquite pods are ready. The golden pods are ground into flour that lasted months without spoiling. It has a low glycemic index and prebiotic fiber, and roots that reach over 100 feet underground, drawing water from aquifers no other plant can touch. It is the tree that the USDA spent decades trying to eradicate before finally admitting in 1948 that it cannot be killed. Mesquite fits into the late season slot of the harvest calendar precisely when summer crops are fading and autumn has not yet established itself. If mesquite interests you, we have gone deep on it in a previous vault. The link is on the episode page. And threading through the entire year, at the shrub layer between the larger plants, wolfberry fills the gaps. 9 species of desert wolfberry grow wild across the Sonoran Desert. Lycium fromonti fruits year-round in the lower elevations. Lycium andersoni fruits from April through June. Lycium berlandieri fruits from May through November. The berries are the desert's native cousin to the goji berry. Same genus, similar antioxidant profile, and the same zeaxanthin content that research shows protects macular health. They require no irrigation after establishment, tolerate soils too salty for most crops, and provide year-round food and habitat for birds, hummingbirds, and pollinators. Companion planting guides for Sonoran desert food systems consistently pair wolfberry with mesquite, the same pairing the desert arrived at on its own thousands of years before those guides were written. The protein layer of this system comes from the desert's own nitrogen-fixing legume, the tepary bean. The smallest, hardiest bean in North America, domesticated in the Sonoran Desert 5,000 years ago, it produces 25 grams of protein per 100 grams while using 1/3 the water of a conventional soybean. We have covered it in depth in a previous vault as well. The link is on the episode page. The calendar the Hohokam and the Tohono O'odham maintained across centuries was not a farming schedule in the modern sense. It was a reading of what the desert was already doing, and a decision to participate in it intelligently. No monoculture, no single point of failure, no season without harvest. The system was redundant by design. If one plant failed, 5 others did not. The practical question for anyone living in Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Nevada, or the broader high desert Southwest is what this looks like on a backyard scale. The honest answer is that it scales down elegantly. A saguaro takes decades to reach full production and is legally protected. You do not plant one for yourself, but a landscape that leaves existing saguaros in place is already participating in the harvest system. Prickly pear establishes from a single pad pressed into dry soil and produces edible pads within 1 season and fruit within 2 seasons. Wolfberry establishes easily, asks for no supplemental irrigation after the first summer, and begins fruiting in its 2nd year. Agave planted today will produce its single massive harvest in 12 to 16 years, and in the meantime, every offset it sends out can be transplanted to expand the planting indefinitely. Mesquite and tepary beans round out the system with protein, nitrogen fixation, and soil improvement that every other plant in the design benefits from. This is not the same architecture as the perennial food forest we opened recently. That system stacks vertically, layer by layer, each plant occupying a different height and depth simultaneously. The desert system staggers through time. The logic is different, but the result is the same. No single point of failure, no annual dependency, and a harvest calendar that runs across 12 months without requiring you to plant anything twice. The Hohokam built canal networks that still shape the water infrastructure of modern Phoenix. The Tohono O'odham maintained a food system so robust that until the 20th century, type 2 diabetes was essentially unknown among their people. When Western food arrived, processed and tied to annual cycles and entirely dependent on external supply chains, that changed within a single generation. The traditional foods did not fail. The people who knew them were redirected away from them by a system that could be sold. The saguaro is still standing. The mesquite roots still reach 100 feet underground. The wolfberry still fruits along every wash and roadside in Tucson. The agave is still sending out pups on the rocky slopes above the valley. The supply chain you are building your survival plan around has a date on it. The one described here does not. If this vault opened something for you, subscribe to Nature's Lost Vault and hit the notification bell. Every like and every share is one more person who stops depending on a system they never should have trusted. The next vault opens soon.